Good morning. Yeah, you think it is, eh? Yeah, sorry. It is Monday the 26th of October at 8:57 in the morning. I usually bombard you with a bunch of facts and stuff like that. I just want to have a conversation this time. The basis of disability is based on hardship, and that comparison is hardship against compared to how anybody else would have hardship. And under these circumstances, there is no claim for disability because any of you try and go and get a housing inspection on a rental? You know, the law is very clear. Minimum building code is what determines occupancy. If you can't occupy, you can't rent, which is why the bylaw, specifically in Waterloo, says that it is that if it does not meet the code, and the whole purpose is to get them to meet the code, isn't it? And have it happen once we know that that's the standard for that property, we can move on, and then that sets the standard. That's the line the landlord or property owner or property management company is supposed to maintain, and the tenants. But there is a deficit because the Minister of Housing is solely responsible for building code. Minimum building code applies to any structure in Canada, including your sheds, outbuildings, anything. If it is not structurally sound, it is not. Then it's applicable. That's why the laws apply. So this is simple. Minister of Housing. It is highly prejudicial and has been highly prejudicial since the beginning for your inspectors to not do their job and just do a basic, the standard. It's a checklist. You go through the checklist. This is what's the code. That's not. Have it repaired. Here's the time to do it, and let's move on. And the total plan of this whole thing is just to game that, because we gave them the law. They start with the law. There's a reason why they will not inspect these properties, because the verdict is already in on the work order for 100A. They made the mistake of focusing on the backyard fence as 100A when it is clearly not 100A property. It is 98B. And regardless, inspecting at 98B or 100A should tell them 98B needs to be corrected too. Why are they not just correcting it? And it's the same landlord, because they're milking it. They make money off of it. They've got a whole human rights place. We are trying to bring a human rights case, and been trying to bring one since this began. And all they do is keep putting you back to the cookie cutter system, because they know that is the wall of frustration. You can't get past it. And if a citizen cannot get the legal authorities to follow the law, and instead they're able to do what they're doing here, because what they're doing here, go back and look at the film, at the videos. When you see Alison Hensall and Sharmir Maida and all those people coming to the house, that looks really official. They got uniforms on and that, but what you don't realize is they had already given the house a pass, sight unseen. They are there because of the issues we raised, to correct those issues, to bring it to where it was, but it's still not the code. They even enforced, they put an order. That's a work order. It's the same as if a provincial judge hands it down. It is clear in the legislation they are not allowed to grant any favor. So they're not allowed to just sit or be seen to, and they're to follow the law. So where's this thing about, we consider the case closed? Because they used it, they got what they wanted, which was us. That landlord had the rent check for June and decided not to cash it because he was in a legal situation where it said it was unlawful to pay rent. The minute they sat there and fixed their little problem, they turned it all on us and made us homeless, because that is what the job is. Now they got them out of there, raised the rent, for all we know. But here's the real issue. They are required by law to file that order with the land registry office as a deficit, as a debt against that mortgage. The amount of money that would be, that should have been applied against that incentive to deter, because that's what an order is, right? And the only deterrence going on here, well, you be the judge. And look where we are. He ignored the work order himself. He didn't even do the work order, because he's the one in jeopardy. Atlas Property, this is a fact. Atlas Properties and Theo Papadopoulos entered a false, knowingly false, or should have been knowingly, because again, the law is very clear, they should have known. They definitely knew next door with the work order that wasn't complete, because that work order says this is what it needs to bring it into code, into compliance. And they didn't do it, so it's not in compliance. And both Atlas Property Group, which is a major, you see, this just amplifies what the system really is. It's just a bunch of cover-ups. Anyway, we are intending on bringing a human rights action against the government of Ontario, the legal system of Ontario, the community legal services, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. This is a public declaration. You have 10 days to put that order and have it enforced. And you are to immediately come upon these premises, because we have given written requests since last year. Carey Mills was the Marshall Street Tenant Association was formed because of the problems between 100A and 98B with this landlord. At a time when her roommate and best friend was killed by a heart attack from all this, which they're also covering up the responsibility of. You see, the goal is just, you see, the only problem, go look at the video, the only problem they have is getting rid of the problem, which is the people who are complaining. Because they're milking the system. This is a crime, and I'll tell you why. And every taxpayer and every homeowner in Canada, and especially Ontario, Waterloo Region, needs to hear this. Mayor Jaworski, you are to resign immediately. Steve Ross, you are to resign immediately. Brian Larkin, you are to resign immediately. Karen Redmond, I'm calling for your resignation too. If you do not enforce this law, because again, the law is clear, it is your responsibility. What are you afraid of? We already know, because the answer's here. They're ready to do it again. It's a mechanism. So we've given all the appropriate permissions, pulled out all the stops necessary that is available to us without playing their game. Because this is a game. And Municipal Affairs Minister Steve Clark, we're going for criminal charges, because you're responsible. Mr. Clark is responsible for anybody who is operating under Police Services Act. So if you have a complaint against actually under the police services, which means fire, police, workplace inspectors, anybody like that. And it's really funny, because this is what about repeat offenders? This is like he's got 4 cars, and he's got like half brakes on one, and we're working with him to get that fixed, but the rest are perfectly fine to do whatever the hell he wants with them. Because we're just going to wait till we pull him over again and get some more money for it, right? Go look at Landlord Tenant Board. It is clear. All you have to do is look at the judgments, and you start to see the real pattern, because it's not about paying rent. It's about they're not upholding the minimum building code. They are overlooking and circumventing it, as they have done here. That is a crime. But the biggest crime is they are not putting, it appears that they are, and they prevented us from registering the order. Because when you get an order like that, you should be able to walk up to the land registry, say, here's the order, which is a provincial legal instrument, which is required by law to be registered with this department. If it's in default, there's the date, says it's in default, like to register it, and they should just go, that's $30 or whatever it is, here's your receipt, thank you very much, have a nice day. But that's not what they do. They are preventing them from being registered, and I think the reason why is because it would bring a debt on that property. They are arbitrarily, whether deliberate, by error or omission, doesn't matter, but it appears they are arbitrarily tampering with the evaluations of properties and taxes and insurance rates in the Waterloo region by doing this. Because the law is clear. When you have a fine like that or an order, it is to be collected as taxes. They are interfering with the ability to collect lawful taxes, because when an owner-occupied building in Ontario is only exempt from permits if the owner occupies the building and has to occupy at least 50% of it. So if they don't occupy at least 50% of it, so let's say they got like, they only rent out a room. If they only rent out a room, they require permits, because there is no Innkeepers Act anymore. Unless it's the basic cosmetic stuff, like if they're replacing or repairing something, that's different. Unless it goes beyond where they have to upgrade it to, either way. Landlords, it's no issue. This is not an owner-occupied building, which means everything, neither was 100A, which means everything must be permitted and put through the planning department. So that means that you're supposed to submit a fee with your proposed plans. They're submitted to the planning department where they review them to see if there's any issues to do with permitting. And if there's anything that needs a permit, they tell you what you need a permit for and how it goes. Usually they do an incoming inspection, like a pre-inspection, then an outgoing inspection. Then the permit is removed. But the permit, you have to pay for that. You have to, you got the whole industry of these workers where, yeah, it says that you must do it by the industry standard, but why is it that nothing is? Because the people in the industry know that if you do it that way, you won't get the work. It's only the ones that cut corners that get the work. And what does that say about these professional associations? Because, case in point, the furnace here at 98B, replaced in 2015, which was 2 years before Theo Papadopoulos and Commissions Worldwide Inc. even purchased the place. And this furnace was being passed with a rubber stamp because the reason why those cloth tapes are blown out is because they weren't upgraded when they went to a higher force furnace, like a forced air furnace. And when they went from the old design to the forced air furnace without doing the taping properly, it blew out all the old tape because it's significantly more force. But that's not the issue, that's just the evidence. And that's 2015. This law has been in effect since 2012. And what we uncovered by getting the public record, which is why they've cut us off from it now, is that it's all there. It's all right there. And it's a clear pattern of behavior on behalf of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing in the way that they are doing top-down management to the point where we have a work order that we are trying to get enforced and everybody's running away like a scared little rabbit. Including Tony Bruto, which is the head of Landlord Tenant Board for Western Region in London, Ontario, and they are responsible. And again, I am saying right now, Tony Bruto, we have sent in writing permission for the, and we sent it to the minister and to all the powers that be. We are requesting a full inspection of this property and to check the property, the status of the order next door. The evidence is in the on my website here, where you can see that they wrote a letter saying that they consider the case closed. There has been direct interference in people doing their job, including Matt, I forget what his name is, but Matt, the actual building inspector that's supposed to come. All of this evidence is posted, like a lot of this evidence is posted in the description page. I've been trying, what's your definition of hardship? Because here we are again. We had the last one where we gave them all the evidence. He had the check for June. He went in with a paralegal with one piece of paper where it says, is there anything that might affect this case that you haven't made us aware of? And they didn't have anything for it. And we went in there and told them there's an outstanding work order. And when there's an outstanding work order, we're allowed to fight for our rights, but we got kicked out. And the law says it's not even lawful rent. So what's your definition of unlawful? Which means that because this person's acting unlawfully, because the ministry is acting unlawfully, anything the police does to support that is unlawful, including my arrest, including all this harassment of anybody who happens to be landlord-tenant. They are an arm of the municipal enforcement. Municipal act is everything. That's where they run everything. Why do you think all those scandals come from there? The municipal election is in 2 years. I say we start a referendum to have it abolished. It's just an interfering part of government. We can make our decisions on city and regional level. No, sorry, provincial. Because you know what? Region is there to interfere. Here, Region of Waterloo. Where is the inspections? It goes to land fraud. If you have a default on your home and you don't make it, your mortgage gets called in, right? And most of these rentals have mortgages, right? And if you present an unsafe situation such as hazards because it's not the code, that affects insurance, or is supposed to. We have raised all these issues with all these people. They're like, nah, never mind. They're all protected. The one who's not protected here, will you be the judge? Who's not being protected? And it's not just us as a disabled people, because there's 4 disabled people here trying to live their lives. There are 4 people, they would rather play their games, and they've gone through, what, 3 paralegal, or 3 representatives for legal and that, and now they're back to landlord-tenant. We got a new one, the case is, and we are saying you are to cease and desist this case until you make a full accounting of this property and what's going on here, because this is still based on that old action that you shut down. They have a new one called SWL 4194820. Notice of hearing on November 4th by video conference. But what I want you to pay particular attention to is, you see the name of the, between who? Atlas Property Group Limited. That's funny, because they represented was Koenig Holdings, which Mark Koenig is a property manager for this group. All of which participated in the, because again, this building, if it's not to code, means that they submitted false documentation for the application, which you are not allowed to misrepresent any facts, which they did in the initial application by Theo Papadopoulos, and I believe that Atlas Property took over there too. But Atlas Property was aware of the order. I sent them a copy of it again. This is Willing Partners. You got Willing Partners and Shane Turner and all of his people at the office. You got Willing Partners all the way through the whole Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, from Steve Clark down. And Steve Clark, you're responsible, because if you don't do this, you're the one I'm coming after. This is class action tort action against the government on behalf of all taxpayers, all legally operating landlords. And this is proof that the tribunal system is nothing more than a mechanism. It is the biggest human rights abuse ever, and you can't even get into human rights to make any issues with it, because, like I said, the whole human rights system, this is it. What do you define as hardship? What do you define as reasonable enjoyment? What do you define as value for money spent? Because our dollar that we spend here for our rent is exactly the same dollar he spends to avoid his responsibility. And it's taxpayers' funds that's being misused, because you are required by law to do your job. So now it's time to do it. You have 10 days from this date. November 4th, we are also seeking immediate assistance, because this has been psychologically traumatic, as by design. We are overwhelmed by design. We are under resourced by design. And even if we had all those resources, you're not following the law. So, Mr. Premier, what do you call price gouging? What do you call taking advantage of somebody? You will cease and desist all operations for the tribunal immediately until this is reviewed by human rights. And if you don't, every count of any kind of any kind of decision that is improperly done by this board or this ministry or this government from this day forward is another count of class action tort. We need to take control of our law. To act lawfully is not just a concept, it is a principle by which all criminal law is designed. And if the people who are supposedly claiming to enforce the law, let me ask you, what law are you enforcing? There is no law that supports any of what you did to us next door, or anything that you're continuing to allow them to do here. Can you do me a favor? Go upstairs and get those 2 envelopes for me real quick. Real quick, because I don't want to make this too long. I want to show you people that this is just a game to them. Because, well, go look at the videos. Yeah, you know, I'm a musician. Denise is a musician and artist, and we got work. Carrie was working, and this has been so traumatic on her with the coronavirus complications and that, and the fact that Mark Koenig and them just keep coming around without taking precautions. They don't give a shite about anybody. They're all powerful. We're insignificant. We're notwithstanding. That's the message they gave them. So, Thank you, Denise. Just to show you, they claim that we're not paying rent. This has been sitting on the check. Oh, sorry. Let's go this way. This has been sitting on the fridge, ready to be collected up when able. Because again, oh, which way am I going? Oh, sorry. Because again, it is unlawful to cause rent to be collected, which includes putting this unit out there for rent. And that's in black and white in their own words. So it's very simple. You do an inspection and is this to code? No? Well then guess what? There you go. Answer. Asked and answered, determined, that is why we required it to begin with. To not have done that and to fight against it, and not only that, but to interfere with it. Because they interfered with the process. And it's all right there. They are not allowed to misrepresent either. But they're saying we don't have rent. Well, here's the one. Money order for the full rent, ready to be picked up, but they're playing games. That's for August. Rent for September and October, ready to be picked up. They just stopped picking it up because I guess in their mind, collecting rent is, it's okay if we hand it to them. It's okay if we hand it to them, but you know, that's not collecting rent somehow. And the Landlord Tenant Board and the Ministry of Housing not doing their job and allowing this to continue is not allowing unpaid rent to be, unlawful rent to be collected. And this goes for every unit that is applicable to the rental license bylaw. We ask for help too, you know, I mean, you guys can help out. It's very simple. They cut me off from any kind of public record. So, you know, the questions we need to answer is, hey, since 2012 to present date, how many times has the rental license bylaw been enforced to a point of a work order? How, and at the same time, let's do the same search for property standards bylaws. How about bylaws in general and itemize which bylaws since 2012 with regard to rentals has been applied. Let's see the success of this program, because if you look at the preamble, this is to protect people like us. Well, you be the judge. Is it living up to its thing? You know, Gina Bonnejour, whatever her name, Tennille Bonnejour, I believe her name is, which is our ward counselor, same as Melissa Durrell. This is a repeat. This is their book. This is their play. And that's the problem. That's why, again, we have been trying to get this stuff into the human rights, and they are blocking it. Even Human Rights Legal Support Center is one of the places we're bringing to human rights, because they deliberately, or by error or omission, doesn't matter, deliberately frustrate the situation to make you go away. They just make it totally unpleasant. So that you, or they convolute it, and if you do go through, they sit there and pull away the meat and potatoes of your case. At least that's what they've been trying to do here. You go to nurses' colleges, any of those places that are run by the government, and they are all controlled by Municipal Affairs and Housing. Municipal Affairs and Housing is the lifeline, and if anybody's confused, I mean, look again, we ask for who does enforcement. We ask for who's responsible, because again, this is not about blame, it's about responsibility. You ask who's responsible, and they're like, well, I don't know, it's not the right department of municipal affairs. You got to go to the city or the region, or is it the province? Well, take a hint in the title. It's called municipal. Okay, either way, you're all responsible, but they do this pass the buck thing. Really? Okay, COVID-19 shows up. Federal government needs mobilization. Regional government, provincial government, city government, all need mobilization on we need to enforce something. So who's enforcing it? Got real clarity there, don't they? It's selective. This is not America. This is not the American legal system. Every lawyer, because, and let me tell you, 99% of the people in these professions are good people. They're just trying to do their job in a system that ties all of our hands. This discussion needs to happen. Queen Elizabeth, you are for all intents and purposes, a criminal. The only reason why we can't officially call you that is because you're above the law. You are Canada. You are in the right of Canada, and all persons acting on your behalf are in the right of Canada, which is why when you do human rights against the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, you have to make it against in the right of Canada. So are we clear on who is responsible for the bottom line of this, Mr. Trudeau? And anybody, disability minister. Disability is an opportunity to exploit. And here's the thing, okay, you're ready for COVID. Hey, how about this? Okay, we had a lot of personal support workers that are in the plan of care of many people in their health care. And part of that plan of care didn't include what happens if everything shuts down. Because, yeah, not only did those people not be able to create a living, but more importantly, the people they were serving, including many of whom were disabled or old age. Now, let me ask you something. At what point is old age disabled? And there's this connotation of disabled and old age when it's whole person medicine. We are individuals with individual rights, and yet all they have to do to take them away is say, you're old. Meanwhile, there's no age discrimination, right? Well, look at your own lives. This is the mess they gave us because it's a lie. I was brought into, they invited me to the courthouse under the guise of helping me, to assist me. I made the mistake of not going with my caregiver, and the result of that is at the end of one of the tapes. Again, I have to review all this stuff, and this is all traumatizing again, but that's the point. We demand Human Rights Ontario, the legal system of Ontario, the Attorney General, whoever the hell you need to be, I don't give a shite. We have 4 disabled people who are clearly being abused by the law here. We are our human rights. What human rights? What legal rights? What civil rights? We are not withstanding and made to be so. They don't have to answer to anybody in their opinion. I believe they have to answer to every one of us legally responsible tenants, legally responsible landlords, and legally responsible taxpayers. And the politicians and the firefighters and the police officers and everybody else who would love to do their job but they refrain from doing it. This is by design. What the evidence shows in this case is this, because what other explanation is there? There is no law you are lawfully hanging any of this on. The interference that was done with getting us out of 100A and the level of, and again, this Waterloo, this municipal, regional municipality of Waterloo is, I don't even know a word to describe it. It's a lie. It's a put on. And every member who has a mortgage in this region, welcome to your Canadian Chinese finger trap. They just announced another $110 million for downtown, selling properties. So that means there's going to be a lot of more, how do you assess value of a property? Well, the way it says by the law is you're supposed to do actuarial, which means you do a property assessment based on minimum building code. So if you have a property listed at $300,000 and it says by doing that assessment that $100,000 is required to bring it up to code, that drops the price by $100,000. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. That's real value of the property. And then that way, when they bring it up and they say, well, we're mortgaging that for $300,000, it is worth $300,000. That is a premise and basis of all land, mortgage, contracts, anywhere. If you bring if you have anything like an encumbrance, such as a lien because you're not keeping, first of all, you don't keep it in code. If you're not keeping it in code, that should put a mortgage in jeopardy automatically, but it doesn't. But hey, how about you've got a work order that's supposed to be registered with the land registry office, and the only reason why it's not is because it would register a lien, which would bring the value of that property down. And for the purposes of tax assessment, it manipulates it. And we have, at least what we feel is evidence of them interfering with the ability for a person like me to actually register it as a lien. So that means that bordering on banking fraud. possible banking fraud, insurance fraud, tax assessment manipulation, tax collection manipulation, because again, any fine that is collected is to be collected as taxes. So when they say, yes, you're guilty, and then never mind, they just forgave them those taxes, which they are not allowed to do, which is why we are informing, I've informed the finance ministry of this problem with tampering with the tax roll. And gee, why would they do that? Because they're asking for taxes to go up, services go up based on the mill rate, all of which goes to the mill rate. So does this affect any of you? You know, you got to question the chartered banking practices and insurance practices. But hey, you know, didn't they just marry those two industries together with free trade? I guess we're starting to figure out why. I am also putting on the description part of this page that there is a link to a story for Grenfell fire victims. Again, Grenfell fire is the same thing that's happening here. Land property owners, you know, tenants getting caught in between all this stuff. And again, I guarantee you there was problems with municipal enforcement there with regard to work orders and proper inspections. My heart goes out to all those people because again, you're just one of all of us victims. Victimized in these traps, violent traps. The other link is to a story in Australia that just broke. It's talking about they've got condominiums there. Go watch the story because I believe there's a connection here, and it shows that it's pattern of behavior through the Commonwealth, which says, hey, Elizabeth, you're not, like, somebody's doing it in your name, or you are. What are you going to do about it? You're the leader, right? They act in your name. Canada is you. They are your ministers, not ours. These are your laws. Apparently they're not ours. The other one, there's another link that just came out again. 60 Minutes Australia. Wow. Cheers, guys. I mean, kudos on you. Where it shows the banking connection to how these places are done. But the problem is this. That's the same pattern of behavior. The municipal, by not enforcing the municipal laws, there's people in Australia that are caught with $10 million mortgages on their buildings and buildings that aren't even occupyable. And they still have to pay the mortgages on them and the insurance and all that. Well, they can't get insurance, actually. And we're having the same problem here in Canada, aren't we, with getting insurance because of buildings that are no longer to code? When the law is clear, it's to be brought to code and maintained as a minimum standard. So this is not just me and us here. This is a pattern of behavior that needs to be examined. And the biggest pattern of behavior is the way that tribunals are used in every part of your life where it's required for security person. And if I can go to, well, first of all, we should never have ended up at the tribunal unless it was to remove their license. And let me be clear. The law is clear in this regard. If you are found to be not following the law, Atlas Property Group, Theo Papadopoulos, Koenig Holdings, and anybody else who is involved in this is not allowed to participate in the rental market for 5 years. That's what it says. So if you have Atlas Property Group as your landlord, you may be getting a change real soon. They've been notified, and you know what? The law is clear too. They are required to know it. So it's very simple. We do an inspection. You get them on the stand. You say, hey, by the way, when you bought this property, we tried to do that, but they know what we're trying to do, so they interfere with the safe place for us to do that. They prevented us from finishing giving our case. They did not provide a safe place, and they don't. And this is a pattern of behavior which will be demonstrated across several cases that we've dealt with landlord-tenant. Landlord-tenant is there as a mechanism and as a playground. So, if you have been affected by landlord-tenant board, and here you go, if you have had bed bugs, anything like that, they are required by law. Go read the law. It says they are not allowed to rent it until that's done. So, you know, anything like that, you know, this is the sole responsibility of Municipal Affairs and Housing, not the criminals. The reason why the criminals like Theo are getting away with it at Atlas Property Group, because again, Atlas Property Group, you knew that to bring forward your checklist of when you made sure it was to code. Same with you, Theo. And here's a lesson to be learned here, because immediately you want to stop this. You know, here's another thing. They've been using a standardized lease for years. That is the law. You are only allowed to use a standardized lease. Yet here's this real estate agent, fully certified, went to a lawyer somewhere, had him draw up a document as a lease, which is totally illegal and is improper from any degree. And it's not the lawyer's fault. I mean, the landlord's fault. It's the lawyer's. Because, hey, lawyers, if the law says the only thing you're allowed to use is the standard form, the only form he should have been handing him was that standard form, not creating a document he could go in the marketplace and just spill around everywhere. Where's the responsibility of the professions? Real estate board. This is the second real estate agent, professional certified real estate agent, that this has been doing this in Waterloo region. And exactly the same thing with pending developments. Same tactic. Unlawful acts supported by the police, which are required to act lawfully under Police Services Act. If you have anything before Police Services Board or anybody like that, prisons, with regard to how they do conduct, like Police Services Act or anything like that, you must, if you haven't had a decision on it yet, you need to make an amendment to it immediately. And you need to put at the top of the page, in the right of Canada, the Municipal Affairs Minister, because Municipal Affairs Minister is responsible for all these things. A landlord, here's a landlord that was caught after 2 years not cooperating, and this is what he gets. This is his deterrence. If I have a, okay, hey, Minister of, any of you guys in power, you got more than one vehicle? So that means if you have only one vehicle that's safe, you can do the rest, right? Have them however you want until they catch you? Is that what it is? Well, he was caught. It's repeat offenders. Province of Ontario, if I'm a landlord who has one rental in Ontario or 100, such as Atlas Property Group, the law applies to all of them. And the way the law is applies to all of them. The Municipal Act is Ontario, all of the province. The specific municipalities may have their own little bylaws, but even when they make bylaws, it states right in every bylaw that if this bylaw tries to supersede the building code, it does not. It starts with the building code. And this is a basic principle they've been exploiting for years. Go take a look. Because how many landlords, if they've been told on one building what the rules are in Ontario, then they know all of them, right? At least that's the approach from enforcement. So what happens is, if you make everybody license their property, and in order to get that license, you must provide a official housing inspection. That would create jobs. It would create revenue. It would stop this backflow and interruption of legitimate tax collection, or sorry, illegitimate tax collection, and allow legitimate tax collection, because again, they have prevented, they're misusing tax funds to do this. They have prevented proper taxes from being collected because again, permits are also to be considered as taxes for the purpose of collection. So Finance Minister, you need to do your job. Premier Doug Ford, your name is at the top of the list because you have to be Premier this time, but don't worry, I'm putting in the previous Premiers too because they did exactly the same thing. So this is not a political thing as far as party. You need to understand this is the job that they are required to do for the Crown because municipal is the Crown. So we need this conversation. I think it's time that, at the very least, municipal needs to be reined in. I think there's no need for it. It's just an interference thing, so maybe we should do a referendum to have it abolished. And the other referendum we need to have across this country is that when Queen Elizabeth dies, her crown dies with her. I am not your plaything, lady, and neither is anybody else. And your reign of terror is over. You paint it however you want, because you know what? I've lived your experience for 16 years. I was in a court of law, supposedly as a disabled person, and they were ordered to, they were said, oh, we will take a constitutional challenge, but did not provide anybody to assist me to do it. And anybody I tried to get to do it are going, well, no, let's just do the settlement, get it out of the way. They do not want a constitutional challenge. I am asking anybody and everybody who can assist me to fill out that freaking form and to put this together in a cohesive case, because we've got more than enough to show. And what's going on here is just butter. What's your definition of origin? What's your definition of lawful? How do you see it? Are they supposed to be using the taxpayer, your money, the money that we pay through taxes, to allow the police to be bullies? Arbitrarily and without merit, because there's no reason. We were inviting them in. We're the ones who are supporting the law. And that's the reaction we get. So, again, what is your definition of unlawful? Carrie Mills has been, this is torture. There's no other way to say it. They've been allowed to operate improperly for 2 years. Then when they found out about it, they just amplified it. They gave them the ammunition and wherewithal to do what they're doing. I mean, if you don't know there's a state of problematic state of affairs in this province, Atlas Property Group, how many properties do they run? It's time for V-traps. The Municipal Act applies for all of Ontario. What you need to do is go to your local area, your city hall, or whatever controls your regional municipal bylaws or area bylaws. You need to look at your bylaws and apply your bylaws. So take the law out, and if it says you're not allowed to have fences with more than one material, so if you got a backyard with wood fence and metal fence and rock fence, that is a violation. You're not allowed to have trees growing through fences to be obstructed. So if you go out and there's trees growing through fences, chances are that is an infraction. So just read, it's very plain, very simple. There's building code. Any questions, guess what? There's a 1-800 number you can call for the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing with regard to building code, where you can actually ask them. And this is a resource for every landlord, every person in Ontario, which we just found out. You can, in writing, you want to sit there and tell them what your situation is, and then ask them if it applies. And they will actually tell you. They will say, here's how it applies. Here, they don't give legal advice, but they give legal information. And again, here's the thing. When you go to an MP or anybody like that, they always go, we're not allowed to give legal advice. It's not advice, it's information. You are not a lawyer. We are not there to seek advice. We are there to seek information and to give information to have laws changed and to have them upheld. Every time I went into one of those places, no matter which level of government, they all had the same thing. I'm sorry, that's a legal issue. And you know what? I was frustrated by that, but you know what? No, I'm not, because you're exactly right. This is a legal issue. It is the legal system in Canada designed. By error, omission, or design, doesn't matter. Even if it's deliberate. In my case, I believe it's deliberate and targeted, because we have evidence of the same. And I believe this is more of the same. This is a psychological, because again, when I was arrested unlawfully and brought into the hospital right when we were about to be evicted, that put the stress on Denise to do it on her own. That put the stress on me, because they were putting stressors on me and trying to they were provoking me in the hospital to try and provoke. That's what this all is. To play with and intimidate, coerce, and bully. Where do you think the PTSD came from? There's no follow-up, because they know what the answer is. There's only one agenda here, and that's to break us. And to make it so unpleasant that you'll never even consider doing this again, because that's the system in Canada. We have asked Human Rights Legal Support Center for help. We have asked Human Rights Tribunal for help. And every time, and we just went again, even with all this. And they're ignoring us because they already know what's coming. We are seeking assistance of how about a retired lawyer who's not before the bar anymore, or even if you are before the bar, because this is a problem. The bar is what's preventing them from doing this. They're friends of the court, and the court is the crown, and the crown is the queen. Head bone connected to the neck bone connected to the shoulder bone, or collarbone, whatever. You got, I mean, are you enjoying yourself, Doug? Human rights abuse right in front of you. I'm done. We're going public. This is a crime, and we are asking you to assist us in preventing this crime from going any further. We are demanding that this hearing be immediately suspended, and all action on this be suspended until a full investigation is done into what happened here, especially with the so-called application of the law. And especially with regard to, there's a pattern, because we discovered somewhere else that, or there may be a pattern, because in Kitchener there was another issue. We had another property which we helped somebody else out with, and that happened to have a work order in place with regard to what was supposed to be done. It was well overdue as well. And their pattern of behavior is exactly the same. They huddle together, they cover each other's butt. Go here and look at the fire inspections. They are lying. They are suiting it to the unit, because with the carbon monoxide detectors, it's clear. In 100A, it was above our head. Here, it's where it's supposed to be, no more than 3 feet off the ground, on every floor. Building inspections, like I said, go and help us get records. You need to call Mayor Jaworski. You know, the thing about amalgamation is that all they need to create any situation to continue it going, even if we just voted on it, all they need to do to sit there and work on stuff and charge money for it and do things behind the scenes is to get a representative from city, region, and province in the room together, or city, region, and federal. Any three of those parties get in a room together, and it's automatically quorum to be able to do whatever they want. So Victoria Street, why does it keep going on even after elections and stuff? Why does expansion keep going on after elections? And where is it? Municipal level. Amalgamation, they're saying it's not happening? Well, I beg to differ, because there's a conflict of interest. Mayor Jaworski is that conflict of interest. He is mayor of City of Waterloo, and he's also regional representative for Waterloo. So that means in order for them to have quorum, all they got to do is have one person from the province or one person from the federal government to get together, and they get to do whatever they want. Behind the scenes, working against, because is this not working against what the laws are? Is this not working against taxation? And here they are, interfering with all this taxation and proper collection of the laws and that, and yet here they are at the trough again going, we need more. We need more. And that more is based on a mill rate that has been affected by these issues. Because if those, and again, banking fraud, because if this is mortgage properties, by having these defaults on these properties, put those mortgages in jeopardy. So this goes deeper than just landlord-tenant. We don't know what to do. We're going to do our best. We've already gone there. They sent a paper where you got to fill it out. And again, here, we're disabled. We've been traumatized, repeatedly traumatized, to the point where they're tag teaming us. Meanwhile, they represent the same person, and the law represents the same position. Impossible. But they give you these papers where, okay, so yeah, you got a week, and yeah, we're going to do Atlas Property Management now, so I got to prepare subpoenas to make sure that the people that are involved specifically show up to be questioned. You know, we got to have time to do that. You got to write all this down when they've already been given all the information. Last time we went in there, and it's all posted, we gave the information, the wealth of information on that last property as to what was actually going on there, was they've already received. They received all of it, including the law. And even though the rules are clear that we are entitled to form an association, we're entitled to defend our rights, we are not allowed to be penalized for doing so, and all the rules to do, you know, despite all the rules, all the laws, look what happened. How did they make it impossible? And the whole point is this, you know, I'm already homeless. I'm basically staying on this couch. Because until this is settled, I'm not signing a lease with anybody. There's no sense. My money isn't worth anything. I'm notwithstanding. I'm not the only one. There's 3 other people here. And John Lichty, he went by his middle name Tom, paid the ultimate price. He had a heart attack from all this stress, from this assault, from this siege. And then we had to go through the fallout of what the Municipal Affairs and all those people in charge of that, because guess what? He's also in charge of the Office of the Advocate. They are all connected. This is the connection. The only connection you need to know is Municipal Affairs and Housing. Go look at what they're responsible for. And Doug Ford and Liberal Party of Ontario and NDP Party of Ontario, you're all being named. Anyway, we're done. Well, we're not quite done, I guess. You need to help us. We need to help each other. We need to demand a full property inspection investigation as to what happened here, because this is criminal. Government sanctioned, apparently. Anyway, I'm going to put in the reference to the other landlord-tenant board, because we are preparing to have those. Again, she was represented in that one as well. This is a continuance of that case. And he lied under oath, because they were saying we were the reason why they were prevented from doing those repairs. Many other things, but they can make it up as they go along, because, hey, that's what the whole system is for. And you know what, disability minister, I think I'm going to put disability at the top of the list too, and Human Rights Ontario, Human Rights Canada. This is federal as well, because we have approached the federal ministers since Carla Qualtrough, but I mean, that's all in there. So, we ask for your help, but let me get through this real quick. Where do I got that? Anyway, another landlord-tenant board matter is connected to it. I'm at the end of my rope. I mean, my health is affected, my psychological thing is affected, everybody here is affected. They're paralyzed, basically. So that leaves it to me, because there is nothing. It's all a ruse. You're paying all those taxes for human rights, and they are the harbingers of human rights around the world, when really what they are is the supreme leader of human trafficking. Because what would you call it? I know what I feel like. And 12 years a slave got you beat, going on to 17. And it's really funny, because this municipal affairs minister is also in charge of people who inspect workplaces. So, Ministry of Transportation can get it together. They've got all the same resources and tools. But Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Housing and can't get it together. Repeat offenders everywhere. Here you have 4 properties that are at the same time, and yet that's not warranting. It's where it begins. That's important. And hopefully this begins with you guys helping us, helping ourselves. Anyway, I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. Please stay safe.